What happens after you find product market fit? How do you grow it? How do you sustain it? And there's this thing that I called and coined called the lasting mover advantage. And it sort of came to me in a dream, literally, having grown up for 47 years, roughly, thereabouts, here in Silicon Valley, in this ecosystem and in this world of tech. So a little bit about me real quickly. I'm one of the founding partners of the GrowthX family of companies. We are a seed stage venture capital fund focused on helping our companies develop their markets, not develop their products. We're focused on developing markets and making money as opposed to developing products and raising money. Because in the age of applied technology, it's never been easier or cheaper to get our products to market. It's also never been more expensive or difficult to get traction for them in the market. So we launched a seed stage fund. We developed a bespoke accelerator that was focused on helping our companies grow in a measurable, methodical way. We launched an academy to train and develop the people to work in those companies in the roles that help move the needle, in particular growth marketing and growth hacking, UX design, data science, sales, and our core market acceleration program framework. We also have a corporate innovation team that helps large corporations build and market new, disruptive, innovative products in their world, and also have a civic innovation practice now, helping governments and entrepreneurial support organizations create their own sustainable ecosystems. So this all began about 7 years ago when my partners and I, all serial entrepreneurs, I've done 5 startups. I've had 3 exits. I've had a very expensive learning experience as well. And I've always been on the market development side of my companies. I am not a technologist. I can't even spell HTML. What I do know, though, is how to translate technology into solving real problems in the market. And every great marketer and every great seller needs a great product, needs a great hacker, you know, the whole hacker-hustler dynamic. Every great product developer needs a great market developer, and that's our focus. So we developed an accelerator program to address the failure rate of our companies and the companies broadly. In 50 years in the Valley, the failure rate of taking new products to market has not changed. And the reasons why they fail hasn't changed either. They have very little to do with products and technology and more to do with markets and the behaviors of the humans that are taking those products to market. So our accelerator was designed to address that failure rate and focus on developing and finding what we call these days product market fit. And it's been very successful. Our failure rate in our funds is in the teens, whereas the industry average is north of 60 to 70% globally. And as a result, we started to license our entire program and methodology to accelerators, incubators, entrepreneurial support organizations, great smart entrepreneurs who want to franchise this in different markets around the world. And I spend the majority of my time now running around talking about it. And I'm not going to talk about the formula and the methodology in detail today. What I want to talk about is what happens once you find product market fit. And what happens when, how can you use what you learned from the lasting mover approach to help you find product market fit for new products when you take it. So as I mentioned before, the fundamental shift that's happened in the market that's changed everything in the last decade is we now live in this era of what I call the age of applied technology. It's never been easier or cheaper to get products to market. It's also never been more difficult to get traction for them in the market. I tell the story about the first time I was involved in raising capital for a large startup. On an idea, we raised $8.3 million from Guy Kawasaki and Garage Ventures 20 years ago. We had a good exit on it, but the reality is we could build that same product today, 20 years later, for about $250,000 because all the infrastructure exists. So most of what we're bringing to market today isn't defensible on its merits alone, on the technology itself. 80% of venture is being put into applied technology environments where it's easy to copy, it's easy to replicate, and it's easy to beat people with more money and resources. So our framework was designed to do 3 things. Number 1, to find the truth about where a product fits in the market, if it does at all, and what to do about it. Number 2, to create a functional learning organization out of the team responsible for pursuing that truth in the most efficient way possible, given the limited time, money, and resources that we all have. And then third, oh yeah, can we be profitable along the way? Are there indicators of demand there? The next question I often get is, okay, well, does this framework apply to me because I'm selling a widget, or I'm selling a service, or I'm B2C, or I'm a marketplace, or I'm B2B2C, or I'm B2C2B, or I'm hardware, or I'm software, or I'm SaaS, I'm enterprise, I'm consumer. It doesn't matter, because in the dynamic of taking something someplace new for the first time, you're always in a learning curve. And that learning curve is human to human, is what I call H to H. We're all H to H when we're taking something new to the market. So it's a very different dynamic, and it applies in any circumstance. It's not about the stage of your company. It's about the stage of a product in the market. You're a strange person taking a strange thing to a bunch of strangers. And it's a very different dynamic than when you have a known, predictable, repeatable, supportable program, a mature company, a mature market. So that's what we do. Products and markets are unique, but the path to product market fit is not. So, I'm often asked, how long does it take to find product market fit? I have no idea. Every company's different, every customer life cycle is different, every market dynamic is different. All I can tell you is what I don't know about your market. But I can ask the right questions in the right order in order to determine where the patterns exist. Okay? So a lot of factors that go into it. But then the question comes after that. Because we've had a lot of success in helping our companies find product market fit, it's how do they keep it and grow it? Again, in the age of applied technology. How do we maintain that lasting advantage? What do we do from here? Because here's the reality, and it doesn't matter if you're a corporation or a startup, over 90% of products taken to market do not survive year 3. According to Nielsen and some other data points. Okay? And what I've noticed a lot in growing up in the Valley and being involved in this, especially working with founders, and even with corporations in our corporate innovation practice, they're constantly asking me, they're constantly feeling this pressure of getting there faster and trying to be first to market. And we've always heard this mantra of first mover advantage, first mover advantage. If I can be first, I can win. But when you actually look throughout the history of Silicon Valley in tech, and you look at the biggest, most valuable companies, most of them weren't first. But they learned how to last. And so what did they do to learn how to last? And so before we get into that, I want to talk about my definition of what it means to be a lasting mover and what that advantage is, right? It's a real and sustainable benefit, okay? Enjoyed by an innovative company that enters a market and does 3 things. Because I believe in the rule of 3, and I love doing things in 3. I talked earlier about finding the truth, about where your product fits in the market, creating functional learning, and determining profitability. Well, in this case, in this instance, there are 3 things I think that a lasting mover advantage does and does very, very well. The first is they own the customer use case. The second is they own the customer's thoughts and actions and or behaviors. And the third is they own the relationship. And one begets the other and begets the other. And if you can do those 3 things and you can focus on those outcomes, I think you have a better opportunity at lasting over time and getting past that 3rd year. You with me so far? Yeah? I know you're hungry. We'll get out of here soon. So let's talk about some examples of lasting movers. Apple didn't invent the smartphone. Google didn't create search. And Facebook didn't create a social network, right? I think we all know that to some degree. Yet they're 3 of the most valuable companies in the world. And they have done, I think, a good job in the instances that we were talking about. What's the use case that Google owns? Yeah, I've got a question. I need an answer to a question. Then how do they own your thoughts and actions? And this is really top of mind in today's society, isn't it? They drive search in certain directions. And they, again, with algorithms and otherwise, can manipulate that, and so can we as marketers. Make sense? Okay? I don't think they do a great job of owning the relationship, which is why I think they are at risk, and people think I'm crazy. But I can tell you that a third of the S&P 500 in 2030 you've never even heard of yet. Because the average turnover in the S&P 500 in 1970 was 75 years. Today it's about 12. And by 2030 it could be 5. And that's what the age of applied technology means to all of us. Okay? What about Facebook? What's the use case they solve for? Anyone? Yeah. The need for human connection and interaction, right? That's still a basic human need. Once they've done that, now they can really drive your thoughts and actions and behaviors, can't they? And they're going to own that relationship as long as your friends are there. So those are some examples. But does anybody know, quick quiz, does anybody know who created the first smartphone, created the first search engine, or created the first social network? I'd love to know. Anyone? Huh? No. Good guess, though. Alta Vista was around for a very long time. Does anyone have an answer to any one of these three? You're getting close, but here's a fun fact. Okay? Well, here are your answers. The first smartphone was created by Simon Personal Computer, launched by IBM in 1992. The first search engine was Archie, launched by a student at McGill University in Canada in 1990. And then 6 Degrees in 1997 by Macroview was the first social network on the internet that we know of. All three of these, quote unquote, were first movers. None of them exist today. Okay? So, if you agree or believe that it's important to create something that's not just finding product market fit today but can last tomorrow, what are the things you need to be able to do to become a lasting mover? Let's talk about owning the use case. Do you have a clear definition of how your product or service is being utilized by an individual initial customer profile? Not ideal, but initial. Who's that early innovator or early adopter that you can absolutely clearly define what the situation is, what the problem is, the implication of the impact of that problem, the resulting need, and how you solve for it very clearly. Define that use case. And that's just the beginning. From there, you've got to go deeper. The moment you get an opportunity to understand and co-define a use case with your customer, you don't do this in a vacuum. You gain mutual agreement on this with your end user. What does that look like? How much more deeply can you get into that use case? The more I do this, the longer I've been at this, 25 years, the more time I spend with less customers defining use cases. Because again, the risk is in the market side of this. The idea being that if I do this well for these people, there's a big enough market behind it for me to continue to grow later. So clearly define that use case. How do you measure it? How do you know it's working? Where's the success metrics? What's the job? What problem are you solving? How do you solve it? How do you measure that it's actually being solved with leading and lagging metrics? And that's by user and use case. The second is to own the behaviors, or what I call the customer's thoughts and actions. Once you have that use case, they need to be looking to you for what to do next and how to think about it and how to feel about it. And if they're not, you're not adding value. If they can't live, you can't own a use case and thoughts and actions until they cannot live without you. Until the pain of working without you is so great that they don't want to change. That can be in the form of data, that can be in the form of analytics, that can be in the form of strategic mindset shifts, it can be a whole host of things. Getting them to think and feel differently based on the information that's being created off the work that you're doing, or the emotions, or the feelings, or the actions. And then finally, can you own the relationship? How do you create loyalty? In enterprise SaaS, where we do most of our investments, the ones who do this better than anybody else is Oracle. They know how to own and manage relationships at the highest level and accounts and keep their competition out and or determine which ones to acquire. And that's how they're able to sustain and grow year over year. They understand the importance of relationships because they know they're not the only game in town anymore. And they know that every day they're being innovated and disrupted out of certain instances. But they have a way of managing those relationships importantly. And when you talk to the world's largest buyers, the number one thing that they want from their sellers and their marketers is value add. They want somebody to show them something they haven't seen, tell them something they haven't heard, give them something they didn't even know existed. And once you do that, now you have an opportunity to own that relationship. Don't just set it and forget it. This self-service economy is bullshit. I have an article called SaaS, Why SaaS Should Be Called Service as a Software, not Software as a Service, for a reason. Our most successful companies are service-oriented first. They spend their time understanding deeply the use case, the thoughts and actions created from that, and then build relationships around it. And then they can automate all that shit on the back end. But you're not winning by giving people just their own way of doing things. And you're not learning, and you're not going to stay ahead of your competition. Because every new innovation, and every new technology, and every new solution you create creates a whole new set of problems you didn't even realize existed. And now you've got to go after those. So what are the characteristics of the individuals that are responsible for being lasting movers and doing it well? 3 things. Number 1, they have a learn-it-all mindset. They love to learn, they embrace feedback, they remove the word rejection, they're not afraid to ask questions, they're not afraid to make mistakes, and they're not afraid to be honest about the current reality of where their product or service is in the market versus the ultimate vision of where they want to go. And they're jointly looking not to sell those initial products to customers, but to recruit early partners. People that will go on the journey with them. People who are willing to take the risk associated with that and give them 2 things. Time and truth. The resources necessary for you to learn where your product fits in that use case, and the honesty to help you get there faster. They're hyper-focused only on that use case. Nothing else distracts them. They hyper-qualify everyone out of their funnel except those that they think are most likely to help them win and learn now. And then they follow a framework that's measurable. Just like the one that we provide through the MXP program, I don't care what it is. This isn't about me selling MXP. This is about you understanding a way and a methodology and an approach towards finding that. And that framework involves the 3 things I talked about before. Finding the truth. Setting up a scenario where people will be honest with you. Because we live in a world today where people won't tell us the truth if it creates more work or conflict. And I'll tell you, if I've learned one thing from taking hundreds, if not thousands, of products to market in my career, is that people don't want more work. They want less. So don't create an environment that creates more work. And don't create an environment where they feel uncomfortable telling you the truth. And that's that learn-it-all mindset to support that. The second, once again, is to be a chief learner and believe that learning will lead to the right kind of revenue. And that your focus is to rapidly learn as quickly as you can who your customer is, what that use case looks like, what thoughts, actions, and behaviors are created from it. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you better figure out how to be profitable. Because that's the only reason these products don't stay in the market. Because they don't pay for themselves. And in big companies in particular, they set arbitrary barriers around the idea of what success looks like for a product in the market, and they give it an arbitrary deadline by which time they have to get it. And they do it every day. And they will kill stuff in seconds if it doesn't meet someone's needs or mood. So in closing, I want you to just remember, don't try to be first and persist that, that urge to push hard and fast, but to try and do things that last. Thank you.